Hello, all my sexies. How are you today? We're going a little bit off topic from our usual driving vlog. This is also coming out a day late. Bad me. Anyway, we're going back to what I kind of used to do. This is going to be a bit of a rant. It is. I'm telling you right away, this is a bit of a rant. There's inherent bias in it because I am biased. And what we're ranting about today is we're ranting about a news story that I recently read. Although I have some disagreements with some of the opinions in the news story, my major issue is with the way that it was written. So that's what I'm going to try and focus on, even though I have some other issues. We're really going to try and focus on the writing of it. All right, are you ready to delve into it? Well, I have to give you one more quick thing before I actually start reading it out. So, this news story, I recently found they attempted to find a second source, kind of, but they didn't attempt to find the second source until after they'd already posted the story. So it is still equally guilty of what I'm going to accuse it of, okay? So, this story only has one source, it's the primary source. It has not been run by any other news outlet. I have to clarify news outlet. So, it is run by the National Post ran this story. It is on other websites. It made it to Reddit and a whole bunch of websites that specialize in pro-life and being anti-LGBTQ and the other acronyms. So that's your background to the story, right? One source, no other major news story. No, also this took place in British Columbia. The only news source that would run it is in Ontario. So there's like local news sources won't even run it. I feel like these are important things to think about going into it. Okay, are you ready? So, we're going to start reading. We'll take a few stops. We'll address some issues. Okay, a teacher at a posh private school in British Columbia was fired last month after making an innocuous comment about abortion to his grade 12 law class. There was no way of knowing, since discipline matters are shrouded in secrecy. It may be the first time a Canadian teacher has been fired, not amid allegations of impropriety, anyway, for having the wrong opinion. So right there, we're already throwing they have no way of substantiating this comment, and they say it, but they still say the comment that this is a first. Okay. Certainly, Laurie Foote, a spokesperson for the 600,000 member strong Ontario Secondary School Federation, said Wednesday that no one at the association is aware of anyone being fired in Ontario in comparable circumstances. Okay? Moving on. Now we're getting into the real story. The 44-year-old teacher, who was asked not to be identified to protect what's left of his career, was teaching the criminal law unit a lesson on vice, ethics, morality, and the law to a small class in a Vancouver area school in late November. It's a good story so far. I was working my way through examples of how some people's sense of personal ethics is more liberal than the letter of the law, he said in an email. For example, actually, I didn't catch this the first, second, and third time I read through this. It would appear that they didn't actually interview him. Maybe there'll be some wording later that makes me change my mind, but so far it seems like they never actually interviewed him. They just read his email and ran a story from it. That is a very important point that I missed. This is why you have to reread things. Okay? For example, he told them, many people might roll through a stop sign on a deserted country road, deeming it morally acceptable even if unlawful. In other words, he said, in a pluralistic democracy, there is often a difference between people's private morality and the law. Okay, here we're coming to the major issue. I find abortion to be wrong, he said, as another illustration of this gap, but the law is often different from our personal opinions. That was it, the teacher said. It was a quick exemplar, nothing more, and we moved on. Okay, so that's the base story of how this all happened. That seems fine. That bit right there seems mostly fine. We're not going to go deep into that, or we'll never get through this. A little later, the class had a 5-minute break, and when it resumed, several students didn't return. Among them, a popular young woman who had gone to an administrator to complain that what the teacher had said had triggered her and that she felt unsafe. Triggered and unsafe are both in parentheses. This is where we start having to delve in a little deeper. The fact that she's popular is irrelevant to any issue she may have had with what he said. He is saying he's using triggered and unsafe. So that is his bias, not her words. We're just going to... So before you go on about, like, PC crazy people, I know there's people who want to go on about PC crazy people. There's no evidence that she said triggered or unsafe. That is his belief of what was said, okay? And that, in my case, he had no right to an opinion on the subject of abortion because he was a man. Okay? That's not in parentheses. Again, that's his take on it. So, I'm going to argue both sides for this. Everyone is able to have an opinion on any issue. That's just true. Free speech does not protect you voicing your opinion. You are free to voice your opinion. You are not free to have no consequences from your opinion being voiced. Okay? We're gonna go on that, and then now we're gonna argue. So we argued the one side. We've argued the actual letter of the law. The other side is that men don't really have a place telling women what they can do with their body. So that's okay. Both sides. There we are. This is one of this coming sentence. We're going to go back to the story. Is one of the ones that I take a lot of issue with, journalistically. That may not be a word, journalistically. Anyway, the school, for the record, is a witheringly progressive one. Okay, that is the author's bias coming in. Like, not just this is a progressive school. This is a witheringly progressive one. So she's putting down the school. Okay, moving on. Before class even started last fall, teachers underwent serious gender training, parentheses again, I don't know why, given by the QMUNITY, an organization of LGBTQ Q2S. That's probably, anyway, it doesn't matter. Which, in parentheses, is lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, questioning, and two-spirited people. That's what I should have read at the beginning when I was trying to do the letters. Anyway, we got there. Teachers were told in no uncertain terms, for instance, no one is 100% male or female, this is in parentheses again, and that everyone is somewhere on the gender spectrum, gender spectrum being in parentheses. Okay? So, again, this is his story of what he had to go through. That's me doing it in parentheses, not the story, in the fall. So this is apparently important to the story that he went through this training. I think they're trying to use this training to put down the school. That's my opinion. Just so you know. Okay, back to the story. Unsurprisingly, students at this school, where $30,000 a year tuition buys small classes, regularly say, "I'm so triggered," in parentheses, and are allowed to walk out of class. There's another huge sentence of bias. It's these short sentences that really add the bias to the story. So, the fact that they're paying high tuition, they have small classes, and they're allowed to walk out of class. She's trying to degrade the school again for, being run by money and not having any discipline, I think. Again, that's my opinion of the article. Just clearing that up. What happened to the teacher over the ensuing few days sounds like oh God, this paragraph I'm going to struggle to get through. Sounds like something out of a cultural revolution in Mao's China, where people are subjected to what were known as ideological struggle sessions, forced to confess, that's in the article, to various imagined sins before large crowds and roundly denounced. There's so much bias in that shit. She's framing this as this terrible communist embarrassment. Is, oh God, I can't even. I don't know what that's doing in any sort of article in a reputable my parentheses, publication. Moving on. Immediately after the student complained to the administrator, the teacher came. The teacher came? I think that's supposed to be the student came. I'm going to read it as the student came because that makes more sense to me. The student came with a teacher at her side as support to confront him in a public area of the school. That sounds fair to me. Teachers are in this role of power. It's really hard for someone who's not in power to confront someone in power. So if you bring someone else who's at the same level of power to support you, they don't have to believe in you, but support is in the sense of witness what's happened so that everyone knows it happened. That seems fair to me, okay? So she pressed for an apology, but the teacher resisted because he said it would set a dangerous precedent for a teacher to be reamed out in the presence of a colleague. I don't think her asking for an apology for what he said, we're not covering what he said or whether an apology is deserved. We're just saying that she brought someone to support her and asked for an apology. That's where we're at, okay? So he says he was being reamed out in the presence of a colleague and he wasn't going to apologize. Okay? Back to the story. When I didn't show contrition, he said, I was summoned upstairs and grilled by 2 administrators who told me my job was on the line. Okay? There might be more to the story, there might not. He said something could be portrayed as offensive. You could say shouldn't have been in a class setting. You could say it couldn't. Either way. He said something in a class that is controversial, and maybe he should have just left out the lesson. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe it wasn't. He won't apologize it. He's now being apologized for it. He's now being sent to administrators who grilled him and told him his job was on the line. That's where we're at. Now panicking. He has a family to support and had just recently returned to teaching after several years in business with a relative. He apologized profusely and promised to apologize the next day to the offended student. So now the author is trying to make us feel bad for him because he has a family to support. Again, irrelevant to what happened. That whole sentence should be chopped. Well, he apologized to the administrators and promised to apologize to the student should be there. The family bit, no. The coming back from business with his relative, extra irrelevant, okay? Anyway, instead, the school had an administrator take over the class for a day, whereupon he was told they would all discuss what went wrong in his absence. He would be invited back to hear the grievances and offer an apology. It was clear I must do this successfully or be terminated. I assume that's what he's saying. So that again seems fair to me. There was an issue in class. These students are being graded by this teacher. He holds power over them. So it seems completely fair for an administrator to go in there and talk to the class and get a consensus without the threat of them being punished. What happened? That seems like a completely fair way of dealing with this. He repeatedly asked what he'd done wrong or if there was an allegation of misconduct. Well, that's a stupid question. He knows this whole issue arose from what he said, so I don't know why he's asking what's wrong. But the misconduct thing is, I guess, an important question, which is fine. There's some of my bias, I guess. That should have been left out. The answer I got back was that I was recognized as an outstanding teacher, but students' safety was the school's primary concern. Again, his words, not the school's words. That's an important thing, but I would argue for him in this case that what he said doesn't hurt the safety of the kids. I'm going to agree with him on that statement. Okay? He doesn't actually make that argument, but it's obvious that's the argument they're trying to make. With the discussion now scheduled for the following day, the teacher, near to melting down with apprehension and disbelief, went to a walk-in clinic and asked for tranquilizers. Okay? I'm going to give you a spoiler to this story. The tranquilizers at no point come back into the story. So this is another sentence. That's like, wow, that's a big sentence. Anyway, that's another sentence that's making you try and feel bad for the teacher without adding any context to the article. Okay? Moving on. The discussion was postponed another day, and after white knuckling, parentheses in the article, after white knuckling it through his other classes, it came time for law class. Okay? That's where we're at. It was exactly the horror show he imagined. Bias. I'm now seeing that she puts in parentheses the things that he said directly. So he didn't say horror show. She said horror show. The author. Sorry, the author is a female, which is irrelevant. It was exactly the horror show he imagined. His boss sat among a crowd of students, ran through the list of what had gone wrong and what needed to be changed. What needed to be changed is in parentheses, so that is what he said was actually said. Well, most students appeared to be on his side. We have no way of knowing if students were on his side or not. So that is really irrelevant. The offended girl was still furious. Okay. So she's still upset because he still hasn't apologized. That seems fair. He apologized specifically to her, but then made what was apparently a fatal error. More bias on the author's part. By saying apparently a fatal error, she is saying that she does not believe that what he did was wrong. So she's trying to demean the error, okay? He said he liked her. She was a bright and engaging student. And he said that he had told her father just at a recent parent-teacher night. Okay? So on first read, I was like, okay, he's trying to be nice. On second and all further readings, I read more into that, and I thought, that's kind of emotional blackmail. That is saying, look, I really like you. How could you do this to me? That is absolutely emotional blackmail. He's trying to make her feel bad for having an issue by saying, oh, but I like you so much. Okay, so he's just admitted to emotional blackmail. He may not even realize that he's done it. Maybe he just did it without even thinking. It's possible. We don't know. We honestly don't know. We may never know. It doesn't really matter. Those are the facts we're given. Okay? She stormed out of class in tears, and he was again cascaded by his superiors, this time for having been too personal in his apologia. Shouldn't that be apology? Apologize? I don't think apologia is a thing. A-P-O-L-O-G-I-A. Apologia. Irrelevant. On November 30th, he showed up at the school, was retrieved by administrator, and taken to the head of the school. The private school's equivalent of a principal. Head is in parentheses, so I assume that he wrote it, not the author of this article. He was told he could no longer continue in the classroom. Was offered short-term medical disability top-up for his employment insurance. That part of the story is really confusing. If they're firing him for something he said, why is he getting medical disability? So I believe at this point, and this is completely my opinion coming into it without having anything to do with these sources. So everything I'm about to say, you can just completely throw out, okay? I believe that this ties back to the tranquilizers and that he had some sort of emotional breakdown or something, and they didn't want him being around students anymore, and he wasn't actually fired for what he said. That's on me. I have no way of proving whether it's right or wrong. I don't even 100% believe that it's right. I'm just proposing a theory based on the information I've been given. Okay? He was escorted down the hall and off the premises. Such is a cost. This is going to be in parentheses, so this is something he said in his email. Such is the cost of a small misstep in a crushingly politically correct world. So he believes that there's too much political correctness. That's not an assumption. That is something he said in his email to this author. Postmedia is not identifying the school at the teacher's request. I love this bit. Remember this bit, okay? This bit is really important. Postmedia is not identifying the school at the teacher's request. Remember that sentence. And then in parentheses, because he said this again, they torched me, he said, but I'm reluctant to damage the brand. So many kids would otherwise fall through the cracks, are valued and helped here, he said. So still a good teacher after all of that is her belief. That's the author's belief that he's still a good teacher even after he's gone through this terrible thing. That's the end, okay? So I feel like I've pointed out some of the issues, some of the arguments. There's one more important thing. So this was posted on December 7th. We're going to go back to that line. I lost it. doesn't matter. My mouse is doing something stupid. Where the source said that they did not want the school identified. He said that, okay, on the 7th. There is another article from the 9th. I'm just going to read the very beginning of it, okay? And we're just going to read through the whole thing where I'm not going to analyze it till I'm done. Fraser Academy, the expensive Vancouver private school, where last month a teacher was fired for making allegedly triggering remarks to a grade 12 law class, has put its staff under a gag order. Maureen Stellman, the school head, told Postmedia, who owns this newspaper, in a brief email statement, the school does not comment on personal issues even when we take issues with public inaccuracies. That is very important. Sorry, I said we weren't going to come back to this stuff. Anyway, she emphasizes that no teacher is ever removed from the classroom based on the words or actions of a single student. The school, which specializes in teaching students with language-based learning disabilities, also quietly dispatched a public relations operative to approach Postmedia on an off-record basis. And then they continue the article essentially reiterating the previous guy's problem. So now that so they wrote that story without any sources at all. And then now a secondary source is not going to comment on the record. So first of all, this source shouldn't have been approached because the teacher wanted them to remain anonymous. So now they're writing a thing and obviously giving up the source. Well, not giving up the source, they're giving up the school where the source didn't want to give up. Okay? But this I think what the school said is very important. No teacher is ever removed from the classroom based on the words or actions of a single student. And does not comment on personnel issues even when we take issue with public inaccuracies. So in those statements, the school has said that what was said in the article was wrong, was inaccurate, and that they wouldn't remove a teacher for what one student said. So there's something to it. They're saying that this is my assumption, that more than one student had an issue with it. And that's why he got fired, without officially saying it. That's my rant. I welcome your input in the comments. I want to stress that I believe in a conversation being important about issues. I respect both sides, but only if you're offering a valid argument and not just flaming. So, I disagree with you, Brendan. That's my name. I disagree with you, Brendan, because yada, yada, yada. I'm happy to talk about that. That's fine. Please, write to me. Talk to me. I will talk to you. If there's enough discussion, I will make another video about it. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you guys next time.